welcome to another edition of the Traction Reaction podcast. I'm Steve Zautke. Joining me once again, it is Jeff Orloski, the Polish Pipebomb. How you doing, Jeff?
Fantastic, Steve. Living the dream.
And look out. Someone stopped Kyle Larson. He is on a roll, isn't he?
Yeah, I don't think you can stop him. You know, some crazy things about NASCAR this year. By the time they take the green flag next week, it'll be over a month and a half since Rick Hendrick has not won a race. Okay, it's been, it'll be 45 days since a non-Hendrick driver won a race in NASCAR. That's crazy. That's absolutely crazy. The race at Nashville was great with the exception of the lead. The lead was never in doubt.
That's a good point. Yep.
Kyle Larson dominated, drove away from everybody, ran and hid, and nobody could do anything about it. Until the end, when Ross Chastain actually was very fast. And I thought that if he could have got a late caution, maybe he could have made some noise. We all know how he likes to hit things. But, but there was good racing all over the track, except at the front of the field, which is disappointing. But overall, it was still a fairly good race.
Easily the best run. I thought it was interesting on the telecast, Jeff Burton, that said, well, this is the best we've seen, to paraphrase Ross Chastain run, and especially since he called it he kind of said basically it's not a frontline car. And I thought that was very telling, that he said, yeah, it's not the best car. I'm trying to remember what exactly how you phrased it, but it was, I got a chuckle. I said, well, okay, you're calling it a POS, something we've known for a while with that 42 car. But getting back to Kyle Larson, the Hendrick racing, Harvick had that run the last couple of years. When was the last time we've seen this domination? And we've seen maybe some of it back with the, Jimmy Johnson in the 48, maybe in the early teens, the late aughts, as they call it. When was the last time we've seen such domination like this?
Well, the thing is that it's not just one guy, it's the entire team. All four guys have wins. Even good old Willie Byron has a win. Bowman has two. So it's amazing the gains that they made. And as I mentioned a week or two ago, Chevy was the last one to get a nose job, and to have tweaks done on the nose of their car. And there's, depending on who you believe, there's reports that either because of that or because of something else they found, they made up about 16 horsepower. They're about 5 or 6 short the last year or two, and now all of a sudden they're 10 or 11 ahead of everybody. And it shows with how good RCR is running. Everybody in that's driving the Chevy is good. So it considering my guy doesn't drive a Chevy, is it the most exciting for me? No. But my guy had 9 wins last year and still didn't win the damn title, so that should tell you something.
Well, that's the other thing I was going to ask a bit later in here, but let's talk about it now. I mean, what happens? Let's see, Kyle Larson just goes on a roll, dominates through August, and then Talladega comes as a DNF, has that one DNF that usually every team gets at least once with an engine or something. Next thing you know, he could be on the outside looking in, just having a bad playoff round, like Harvick had last year. Is that? I mean,
it's not going to happen. It won't happen, because Kyle Larson will have such an immense points lead going into the playoffs. He's going to have a minimum of 50 playoff points just going in to the first race of the playoffs. You could just straight pencil him in for Phoenix. I don't think there's any way that he does not make the championship 4.
He picked up 6 playoff points in the Nashville round. The only other point that was picked up was by Kurt Busch.
Well, yeah, because they took the one away from Chase.
Right.
Yeah. And I don't know how you drive a car with 5 loose lug nuts, Chase, but kudos to you. Obviously, the team didn't know because one or two loose, you can deal with the fine and whatever comes along with it. 5 loose, it sounds like something was a little broken over there.
I wonder if they weren't dominating so much that they just said, fine, just walk away. Kind of like that hard, like that bad call in the NFL, and they've gotten away with some others. I'm not saying they're cheating, but you don't want to rub NASCAR the wrong way. Otherwise, they're going to be really inspecting that car during inspection. And right now, so I think Mr. H just said, hey, we won the race. That's fine. We don't care about, Chase will be fine. We'll overcome this. Just let it go and let it walk away, because that does seem very dubious eventually, especially on a track like Nashville too. On the banking and that just something didn't add up there. And once again, it's Martin Truex too, on that one pit road violation where he's straddling the line. And we've talked about this before, but it's frustrating for an old time NASCAR fan like me, where they want to bring in it's the stick and ball syndrome, where they want to have that in and out, the foot touched the line for the 3-pointer, or the foot stepped out of bounds in football. That's they're so envious of that, and they have these little picky rules for the pits just to be comparative to stick and ball sports, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's frustrating. It's that part is very frustrating. Pit road penalties, I don't think there should be a speed limit on pit road. Let these guys go flying down there like they used to. You want to add excitement to these races that go way too long. I thought I lived half a lifetime during that Nashville race, and it wasn't all that boring with the exception of the leader. But the F1 race was 2 hours, the Indy race was 2 hours, and NASCAR puts a 3.5 hour race in the books that day. There's work to be done there, and I don't think ticky-tack things on pit road is the answer. Now, when it comes to Hendrick and the obvious advantage that they have going on this year, it's a total catch-22, right, Steve? You have, Rick Hendrick's been able to buy the best engineers, the best equipment, the best this, the best that, gold-plated toilets forever. Okay, I don't even have one gold-plated toilet, and it pisses me off. But so, do you not like it because the competition isn't as good as it should be for the wins? Or do you give these guys a pat on the back because obviously they found something, okay, and obviously they've got an advantage? So that's what you're paying these guys for, and that's these guys are definitely getting Rick his money's worth this year with the success that they've had. But I can understand, and I've been there where I think it's kind of boring. I thought the Jimmy Johnson era of dominance was god awful. It was just this guy again, this guy, and I hope that the same thing doesn't happen to Kyle Larson, because, as we've discussed many, many, many times in the past, the dude has, if not maybe more natural talent as Kyle Busch or anybody you've ever seen in this series before.
I think yes, that is a concern. But I think when you saw Jimmy Johnson, there's two things going against him from your typical, stereotypical, whatever you want to call it, NASCAR fan. Number one, he was from California, which Kyle Larson is, though. And number two, he didn't really race anything else. But Kyle Larson comes from that Tony Stewart cut where he races everything. He's built up such a local fan base. So many local people have seen him. With Jimmy Johnson, only people that saw him race are the ones that went to Daytona, Talladega, etc. with Kyle Larson, he has built up such a fan base because he's raced at the short tracks. He's raced at Knoxville or Eldora out in Pennsylvania, out in NoCal, running sprint cars out there, down in Paris outside of LA. He's been everywhere. The majority of the people that watch it on TV have had the chance to see him in person and realize that this kid can haul the lumber. So there's a respect there, like with Tony Stewart. So, and the television ratings, now NASCAR is a 1.33 mile track. They did 300 laps there, just over 300 miles, some miles. That's what they do. They do 300 laps or 317. They'll do 500 kilometers. That's the shortened race, Jeff. If this was 1989, we'd be doing 400 probably 420 laps or whatever it was, like the old Nashville 420, so to have a 500-mile race. So God knows how long that thing could have been. What was the race time? Do you remember? I
want to say it was 3.5 hours. So it was almost double F1, which I don't know why anybody would watch, and then almost double the IndyCar race.
You're right.
Well,
3 hours, 30 minutes, and 23 seconds. That's too long. Yeah, you shouldn't have a race go over 3 hours. So that'll be interesting to see if that gets addressed next year, because it wasn't like there was that many yellow. There were they had their yellow flags. So I'm talking messy yellow flags where you get big pileups and whatnot, and that wasn't the case. So Quinn Huff.
Yeah, he made it half a lap, Steve.
If you want, some of them are just downright nasty, but some of the tweets after that were pretty funny. NASCAR's gonna make it tough for that team in inspection. They don't like that. They do not like that. NASCAR's never
fell off. He didn't sit there. Unless he's sitting there on pit road tightening the lug nuts himself, which I don't think he is.
Yeah.
He's not the one to blame, but he looks foolish.
No, yeah.
Not only because of this week, but because, of where he runs week after week after week, and how bad his equipment is. We have no idea how good of a driver Quinn Huff is, because he's driving a jalopy while everybody else is driving, souped out, Mustangs and everything else. It's hard to tell exactly how much talent he has or he doesn't have because of what he's in.
It was interesting when Jeff Green was doing all those starting parks 5, 7 years ago. There was a few people on Twitter that were jumping on him saying, why is this guy out here? This guy sucks. And then somebody else said, this guy won a nationwide title in the most dominating fashion. When was it, trying to think, when was that, about 95, 96 or so? Dominated. So, I mean, it's one thing, like when you see somebody like that, and let's face it, at the end of their career, just getting a paycheck, and I can't blame them. Trust me, Jeff Green was making more money than you and I running a couple laps and parking it, than we are what we're doing now. But yeah, Quinn Huff, who's Quinn Huff? How many races has he? Nobody really knows. That's why there's so, and plus he kicked out a guy with his check. Unfortunately, more and more of that in racing. I understand the reasoning why they did it. Otherwise, that team might not be at the racetrack if it wasn't for Quinn Huff's checkbook. But and what did you think of the Enemants? The Enemants 37 of Ryan Priest. I forgot to mention that to my wife. She would have been. I think she would have cheered for that one.
Hey, I love their coffee cakes, so I was rooting for them.
But I thought they could have. I thought they could have put some bigger donuts on there, kind of had a little more fun with it. It was very conservative. Of course, it is Enemants, so maybe I'm talking on my ass right now, but
well, we'll see if they get back on the car later on in the year, if it's a lot better, or what it's going to look like. I think they won't make that mistake again. And I think they're, the next time their car could really pop if they do it right.
Ricky Stenhouse running the best he's run since Daytona. Clock is ticking on Ricky Stenhouse, especially after he's torn up some equipment over the last few weeks. That was the criticism, and we mentioned it too last year, even with Stenhouse going over to 47. I said, you guys better get your body shop guys all lined up because you're going to need it. And he certainly has torn up some cars, but he looked good this weekend, didn't he?
Yeah, he did look good. And, Ricky, he's a very easy guy to make fun of because of how many times, he causes or is involved in wrecks and ripping apart race cars. So, yeah, it was definitely a good showing for him. It's funny to me, with all the talk of Keselowski joining Roush for next year, as a driver and getting a piece of ownership and stuff in that as well. It's interesting to me that, Stenhouse and some of those guys, they just don't get talked about, and they shouldn't.
No,
If
exactly.
I had a choice of,
yep,
bringing Justin Haley in, or somebody, Austin Cindric, or some young kid, and it doesn't even have to be Cindric, who's dominated the Xfinity series and stuff like that. It could just be a regular young kid. I would, take my chances with that, which is funny because Kurt Busch has been the most talked about free agent coming out this season. Kurt Busch ain't no spring chicken, and Kurt Busch hasn't dominated in NASCAR in many years either. But if he's got a 15th place car, Kurt Busch can park at 10th. And he's done that his whole career. Once he got over his immature, let me crash everything, the 97 Sharpie car was either taking the checkered flag, or it was, it was destroyed by the time the race was over. So, it's been a long time, that Kurt Busch has matured and grown as a driver. And he's definitely starting to see the benefits of it now.
He certainly has. I mean, Kurt Busch is, he's run very well. The other guy I wanted to point out before we go here, you're listening to the Traction Reaction podcast with Steve Zautke and the Polish Pipebomb Jeff Orloski. Kind of sneaking up a little bit. I just noticed an improvement. Not saying he's going to win races or even get top 10s, but he's had a couple of top 20s. He's been running much better as Corey LaJoie.
Yeah. LaJoie is underrated because he's been in crap equipment. It's the same thing. Like the difference that you see in Kyle Larson from when he was in the 42 with Cheap Ganassi to now that he's, dominating the world and winning everything, both at Hendrick and, in sprint cars and all that kind of stuff. Yes, I'm sure he's more mature. I'm sure he's learned, but it's not night and day. It's not like in the last year when he was on when he was suspended from the sport. It's not like he squeezed in and got a doctorate degree in how to drive a NASCAR. The kid's always had this kind of talent. Now he's got the equipment to back it up. But it shows you just switching rides, like when Harvick was at RCR, and for years and years and years, he was the only driver worth a damn there. Sorry, Jeff Burton and, Robbie Gordon and all those guys. And I love both of those guys. But, it was Harvick versus the world. Now it's not Kyle Larson versus the world. He's got 3 other teammates out there that can give him a hand and everything like that. So, it just shows what better equipment can do, especially from a not a diehard fan standpoint, point of view. You would think that Kyle Larson all of a sudden came, just dropped down from the moon with how successful he is. But we saw him struggle at Ganassi, and, it was because of the equipment.
Very good. And we have Pocono next week. Nothing unusual.
Snooze fest.
Yeah, Cody Ware back in the 51. Justin Haley in the 77. Not seeing any other surprises. Not seeing that those guys were surprises, but yeah, it'll be interesting. This could be another Larson or Elliott, or who knows? It should be another Hendrick race. I think at this point, until somebody can step up. Any thoughts on Pocono other than the aforementioned snooze fest?
Well, and that's a little too mean to Pocono, because either their races are a complete bore that last forever, or they're very exciting. So, there's really no middle ground where you sit there and, the checker flag falls and you're like, yeah, that was okay. It's either you love it or you hate it at Pocono. I do love that they shorten the races because they're doing the doubleheader. I think that's fantastic. I just wish the doubleheader was at more of an action track than Pocono. But I think anybody that picks anybody who's not in the Hendrick camp is a fool right now. Would you put 1 cent of your money on anybody not driving a Hendrick car? No, not if you want to win. You want to put $5 down on a long shot, and take our good buddy Josh Balicki. That's great, because if hell freezes over and he actually takes the checkered flag, you're going to get rich on a $5 bet. But it's Hendrick all the way. Another week of dominance.
Very good. Well, we certainly appreciate you taking time out, and we'll look forward to doing this again on the Traction Reaction Podcast. I'm Steve Zautke.
I'm Jeff Orloski.
We'll talk to you next time.